My name is Emil Kacperek. I came from Poland. I work for Dell EMC as a senior network systems engineer, being in networking place for something like 20 years. Before I worked for Brocade IP, and then before that for Ericsson and other integrations company who made the networking on field with the customers. Just let me mention, we also have Aurimas here for Dell EMC, who is covering the region. Aurimas, maybe you want to say something just to introduce you?
Hello. Yes, so I'm solutions consultant for Baltics, covering not only networking, but also servers and memory storage. I'm based in Lithuania, and I'm visiting Tallinn quite often.
Thank you. Okay, so today I would like to tell you about Dell EMC solutions for networking. It will be not about the informations like we have that and that and that switch, and these switches have so many 10 gig, 140, 100 gig ports, because nobody can memorize that. First, I would like to tell you what is Dell EMC approach to the networking, how we see the networking now and in the future, where the networking is going, and why, in fact, we are really well-known positioned in the networking, right? That will be the first part. Then we will have Tomek, who will cover one of the solutions who can fit very well into our strategy, and you will, I hope, know why after this session. And then on the second part, I will show you about our overview of our switches, portfolio overview, some real use cases, and also I will tell you about the Open Managed Network Manager system, which is the, let's say, classical way to manage the network equipment. Okay, open networking. In general, we see the many new trends in the networking in data center generally. First trend, which changed a lot, is a virtualization, right? Probably every customer right now is using virtualization. The virtualization started with server virtualization, and we know that very well. Then we have storage virtualization. We start to see the networking virtualization, but probably the networking is most difficult one to be virtualized. And this is why we see here software-defined network solutions, right? So because of virtualization, the virtualization landscape changed a lot in the new trends. So we can see hyperconvergence, where all the things like storage, compute, and networkings are in the single box. We see multi-cloud, where we are using first public cloud, and then we are using hybrid cloud. So the part of the resources are on-premise on the customer side, but we also use the public resources just to put some services into public cloud to leverage the lower cost, and so on. We see micro data center. We also see the requirement for looking into these data which are going through the network. So we see requirements for telemetry, for analytics. And this is also something which fits very well with our approach and with the product like, for example, BigSwitch, that Tomek will be talking about. The funny thing is that new technologies are setting new requirements for another new technologies, like if we have virtualization, if we have 2 data centers or more, we start to need things like, for example, data center interconnect, right? So just the approach where you can put some devices, some virtual machines into, let's say, the same layer 2 domain in different data center. I have a technology who can connect these 2 places into a single layer 2 domain. Well, we need this because we had a virtualization. And also the new thing is that all these technologies needs a new requirement from the networking perspective, especially the bandwidth, right? 10 years ago, we saw the 1 gigabit connections in the data center. Then a couple of years later, we start to see 10 gigabits. And now we see 40 gigabits, we see 100 gigabits. But the really new trend is 25 gigabits. Why? Because it's using the same cabling like 10 gigabits. It's not really more expensive. This is a little bit expensive. You also can see 25 gigabits on the server side, on the NIC side. So if you have 25 gigabits on a server, you need 25 gigabits on the top of the rack switches. And then probably using the uplink to the core, you don't need the 40 gigabits, you need 100 gigabits. So this is a new trend, and you see that trend in the networking devices. Please tell me one thing. Who sees Dell as a really strong server vendor? Who thinks that's true? Well, we are the first one, right? So I'm sure. Who sees the Dell as a very strong storage vendor after acquiring the EMC? We are also the first one. Who sees the Dell as a very strong networking vendor? Please. Okay. We are not the first one, yes. But for example, in Poland, in the market share, for the last quarter, we were on the 4th position with the market share like 8.6%. Not bad. Of course, Cisco is the first. Then we have HP, Huawei, and the Dell. Even better than Juniper. In a switching market, just to be clear and honest, in the switching market. So not routing in the ISP, things like that, and PLS, just layer 2, layer 3 switching, which is a very huge market, and it becomes more and more stronger. And, okay, I will continue, just emphasize this 25 gig. It's quite important because like in 2013-14, we started to see more and more 10 gig connections. And now you can see that some market analyzers predict that 25 gig market will become more and more stronger, and it will be much quicker that changes from 1 gig to 10 gig. The change from 1 gig to 10 gig lasts for like 4 years or something. The changes from 10 gig to 25 gig will be much more quicker. So we see a lot of 25 gig will be sold next years, and also a lot of 100 gig. 40 gig continues to decline. So more 25 gig, more 100 gig in a data center. Okay? Okay, so going back to Dell networking solution. This is something we can like or doesn't like, but it shows the trends, and it's quite important for many customers. The well-known Gartner Magic Quarter. If we see for a year like 5 years ago, you have a Dell somewhere here. Well, not the last one, but not very good. What you can see on the next years, we are constantly moving to the upper right direction, which is quite nice. For 2016, we were here, seen by a Gartner, by a visionary, and if we look into the next slide, this is for the last year, and this is very interesting. You will probably see the same slide from Tomek, but here we have a couple of vendors, and all these vendors represent approach, which is the open networking approach. And for the next couple of slides, I will try to tell you why Gartner see the open networking as a new way of thinking for a network solution. So here we have Dell EMC, the hardware vendor, not only the hardware, but mainly hardware vendor. Also you see VMware, BigSwitch Network, and Cumulus Network. These three companies are software vendors. They are making software solutions. Together, hardware plus software, it's a network solution for a new future. It's an open networking approach. And it's here. Of course, we have a Cisco here and Arista, which have more ability to execute because they are much more on the market, much more time on the market and so on. But I do believe they will go that direction and these solutions will go that direction, okay? And now question, why these solutions are so strong? Well, a little bit of history. The networking for Dell is not really very new. In about 2011, we acquired the Force10 network solutions, which were really well known, which were very well known from a huge performance. They have very good boxes working in wire speed and very well known in the networking market. And constantly, you can see that we are changing the way we are building the devices. Like in 2008, we have the devices like Cisco Catalyst with with supervisor, MSDC cards, all these things having like 64 times 10 gig ports. Just 2 years later, the same number of ports can be done just by using one rack unit for STEM solution. The same thing for 2010 and Catalyst Nexus 9000 switches. And now, like this year, we have Cisco Nexus 9500, which can have like 128, 100 gig ports. And you will be able to do the same with just one rack unit for a Z9200 switch, which will come to the market like in 2 or 3 months this year. So this is constantly changing. We see the smaller devices, more powerful devices, and we see the change. We are doing the networking with that. So what was the past? You probably remember, well, not everyone. I remember a little bit, something we called the Platform 1, so this is the mainframe era. So how the networking solution looked in the mainframe era? Well, it doesn't look good. Well, it was completely hidden. You bought a mainframe, right, which was a black box, and you had everything in the black box. You have the processor, you have the software, you have the networking defined in the box, and outside you have only terminals and nothing more. So it was Platform 1, completely proprietary solution, completely proprietary networking. Then we are going to Platform 2. We changed that. We are going to client-server platforms. We are going to server computing. What changed here, we have servers, storage, and networking. We have 3 pillars. Still different silos, still different management domains, but at least we are more and more open. And look into the server, look into the storage. If you buy a server, you are just buying a hardware platform, right? I need this number of vCPU, I need this number of memory, I need this number of storage. Then you are installing the software, and this is completely your choice. Probably you want to virtualize that with ASX or KVM or something else, or maybe you put that a Windows, a Unix, a Linux. That's your choice, right? And see how the networking looks even today. There is no choice. In general, if you buy the networking device, this is the black box. When you buy the processor, the ASIC from the networking vendor, then up to that, you have proprietary networking operating system from the same vendor. Then you have a hundred of protocols. Maybe you don't need them, but they are packed inside, right? Then you need proprietary architectures because the vendor told you, well, if you want to, for example, build the fabric, you need to put exactly that model to the spine aggregation and put that model to the leaf, top of the rack. And it works perfectly, and you cannot change anything because this is what we can sell you and it works well. And you are completely closed. Then you have proprietary management tools working with that vendor. Then you have proprietary specialists which has a number of certification which works with that technology. So everything is closed. Compare it to the server, right? This is completely open. And Dell EMC want to change it. And it's doing that from a couple of years. It is not completely new concept. We started that like 3 years ago. So what we are doing for networking is something like what was done for x86 architecture. So what we want to propose is you're choosing the processor. It's not a Dell EMC processor. We are buying this processor from the market. So this is merchant silicon. Why it's better? Because it's much cheaper. We don't want to spend the thousands of millions of dollars to design the ASICs, to build them, to test them, and so on. Somebody else is doing that, like on the server market. Somebody is doing the processor, the Intel or AMD. So we are buying the merchant silicon, like Broadcom and others. 10 years ago, there were no single vendor running the merchant silicon ASIC on its own device. Right now, we are doing that. Cisco is doing that, not on all devices. Juniper is doing that, not on all devices. Arista is doing that. Everybody is doing that. Why? Because it's cheaper for the customer. So we are having the ASIC which we want. Then we are creating the hardware in which we can put this ASIC. So here we have our own switches. They can work on Barefoot ASIC, Broadcom ASIC, Cavium ASIC, any ASIC. And here is the clue. You can put our Dell operating system to the switch, and this is more or less the classic architecture. Yeah, it has a good fit in, let's say, small deployments, but you can put, in general, any networking operating system to that box, to the switch. This is the open networking. What does it mean for you? The customer is choosing what he wants. The customer is choosing operating system which gives him the features he really likes to have. Maybe he don't need to have 200 protocols. Maybe he needs to have the simplicity of management. One big logical switch. Just be able to move layer 2 services very easily from left to right part of the network. And he can choose, for example, BigSwitch solution, which is, by the way, the probably best-selling third-party operating system with Dell devices. You will hear about BigSwitch today. Then you can have a technology, the external controller, software-defined network controller, orchestration tools, which fits very well into that model because here everything is open. So it talks to REST API. It talks the tools and languages many tools can understand. So you have a freedom in the management, right? So this is the way we are trying to sell the networking today. Do you have any questions? So, as I mentioned, this is not new concept in Dell EMC. We started that around the 2014 when we started partnership with BigSwitch or VMware and Cumulus, and then we are going year by year. We have new switches, new models, and new partnership. The last thing, for example, is the virtual edge platform, something we are calling software-defined wide area networks. The same concept for different part of networking, right? We are not talking about the data center, about the local area network. We are talking about the branch to main office connectivity, like a company which has the 50 branches and a central office and need a connectivity between that. And it's using probably MPLS circuits from the big telco company, which are very expensive. So here we have a new solution for that. You are buying a small device from Dell, which is more or less like a specialized small server. And on top of this hardware, you are putting the specialized operating system, which are doing the intelligence, which are doing all the things you need between the branch and the office. And for example, you can use internet connection, which are much more cheaper than MPLS circuits. Or you can use both MPLS circuits for some very important thing, and the internet connection between branch and the office for many other applications, and you are load balance the traffic between, right? And you have the mechanism like security, load balancing, recognition of the application, and so on. So this similar concept, the similar approach to different networking piece of market, let's say. So as I mentioned, in a classical solution, you have many protocols. Many times you don't need that, right? You are using, the customer talking to Dell says, well, I'm using like 5% of networking features, but I have 100 of protocols in my solution because it's there by default. If there is a bug in one of these protocols, I am not using that protocols, but there is a bug there. I have to do the upgrade. I need a maintenance window, and my business is corrupted, but I can't do that. I just need a simple solution which just gives me what I need. Maybe I need just layer 2 and layer 3. Or maybe I just need layer 2, layer 3 plus data center interconnect. Or maybe I just need layer 2, layer 3 plus multicast. I am telling you that because as we are doing more and more with open networking, I will show you something which maybe will put some confusion here. But it's just the summarization, what we as a Dell can do in terms of hardware as a basement plus software. So far, I told you that you're buying the Dell EMC switch, layer 2, layer 3 switch. It's 1 gig switch, it's 10 gig switch, it's 25 gig switch, 40 gigabit, 100 gigabit. We are testing 400 gigabit Ethernet this year. And probably you will see this in the beginning of the next year on the market. So we are quite good in terms of what we can do on the basement, right? So you're buying a Dell switch. The Dell is a dumb box. Sorry, the switch is a dumb box, stupid box, just a piece of ASICs and some interconnections. You need the software on the top of it to be able to put services, serve your application, and so on. And now there is, telling the truth, more solutions here, because we also investing in, not investing is a bad word, we are trying to use the open source networking. So there is an initiative like OpenSwitch, when you have the completely free software, you can download from the internet and install on your switch. And you have fully functional in terms of couple of features, solution. And this is about our new operating system, which is OS 10. So we have, well, in fact, we have 3 operating systems. We have the operating system for a campus solution, which is OS 6. We have the well-known and very mature and being on the market since years operating system for data center, which is OS 9. And since 2-3 years, we started to build operation system 10, which is a new approach to the operating system, completely new design from the scratch, very hierarchical design, design like Lego blocks, just to be able to connect everything on the upside and on the downside. So that network operating system allows you to use any ASIC on the hardware level, right? So the Broadcom is a very well-known, but this year and last year we see more and more ASIC vendors on the market, because more and more companies are buying the open switches, are using the open networking approach. Probably you know how the Facebook or Google data center looks like. There is no a common switch in a Facebook. There is something they built by their own. They just got the hardware and put something on top. Of course, there are also some Dell switches there with the Dell software, but in general, this approach is changing. And these big players like Facebook, Google are showing the way we have to go. They were the first that were using virtualization, probably. So maybe just summarize in that way. What we can do with our Dell EMC hardware and how we can make that hardware work in terms of what we are putting on the top of this hardware. The first approach, and this is really very good approach, especially for enterprises, and this is what we mostly will be talking today. You're taking the hardware from Dell, and you are putting on top the third-party operating systems, BigSwitch network. As I told, probably the player number 1 in terms of Dell switch and third-party operating system because of simplicity and other things, but Tomasz will cover that perfectly. Just to mention, we also have other operating systems which can work on our equipment, like for example Pluribus, which is nice for, let's say, quite special cases like distributed data centers, which needs some layer 2 connectivity and other things. I will not mention that today, just remember we are able to do also other operating system on a Dell equipment, but BigSwitch is the number one. This is the first approach. You then have the classical approach. You are buying Dell EMC switch and put our layer 2, layer 3 stack of protocols here. And you have the classical, let's say, solution, right? You can have here OS 10 Enterprise, OS 9. It works very well. It works perfectly for many, many customers. For very small deployments, probably it could be a little bit cheaper than approach like hardware plus third-party software. What is important? In both cases, you have Dell EMC Pro support. This is very important. The customer is calling Dell. If he has a BigSwitch operating system and a Dell hardware at the bottom, he calls Dell. Dell recognizes the problem and know what to do. Despite the fact this is the Dell problem or BigSwitch problem, it doesn't matter. This is the single point of contact, and customers really love it. But there is also other approach. It's maybe rather for big players like ISP, which have to count any dollar, let's say, but I will mention it. Another approach is to buy a Dell switch and use the open switch software, open community software, which is for free. So you are installing open switch software, and then you can install the also free Linux tool like a Quagga, and you have OSPF or BGP protocol. It's possible, and it's also supported by Dell. And the newest one approach, and this is one why I mentioned about these hundreds of protocols and things like that. You're installing the Open OS 10 Open Edition software, which is base OS 10 software, not the enterprise one with all the features, but just the basement. And you are buying a piece of software which you can say works as a container, which is doing what you need here. Like it's doing layer 2 plus layer 3. Or maybe it's doing multicast. Or maybe it's doing MPLS or data center interconnect. Or you buy this piece plus this piece. And you have what you really want. Just the protocols you need, not all the things together. And this slide shows the Dell approach to the networking, right? This we shows you on the next hours that approach when you have Dell EMC hardware and a third-party operating system like BigSwitch network. And this is very nice in many, many cases, right? There are also other approaches. So in general, the open networking is really the choice for a customer, right? It's choice for a data center. It's choice for an enterprise WAN. I didn't mention, but we, of course, has a campus solution. There is no yet the operating system, the third-party operating system, which works for Dell switches as a third-party system for a campus solution. But the fact is, starting last year, we have on the campus side the switches which are open networking capable, right? So if you see on the SKU, if you look into the SKU, you have like a switch model like S4048, for example, -ON. ON means open networking. Means it has a small bootloader according to ONIE, which is Open Network Install Environment, which is able to find the third-party software in the network and install the third-party software. This is the open networking switch. And on the campus side, from last year, we started to have such a models. There is no the really open networking vendor who thinks about that, but probably it will change in the future. So in general, open networking approach is really what customers more and more see as something really really good, in fact. Okay, I will not cover portfolio on this session. Just let you know that we have many different solutions for different segments of networking. And just want to say, last thing, how we are building networks today, right? A couple of years ago, you see a conventional chassis cores and chassis solutions. And this is old architecture. Right now, even Gartner says the recommended way to build the network is something like you can see on the slide, right? So this is spine and leaf, or this is a fabric architecture. Why it's better? Well, from several reasons. First one, it's very scalable, right? You can build small fabric, and this is very easy to add additional switches here on top of the rack and additional switches on the aggregation, which is called spine switches. And you can use it on the fly, right? This is easy. You have the predictable performance, you have the predictable latency. For example, here you have all your servers. And from single server to another server, there is always two-hop way from a server to the server, because assumption is all the spine switches are connected to all the top-of-the-rack switches. And it, of course, reduces the capital cost. It reduces the operational expense. This is really the proof, easy to prove. In Dell solution, from the hardware perspective, what is important? We are not the hardware-defined data center vendor. So we are not telling you, you can have the fabric solution, but you have to buy this exact model for a spine and this exact model for a leaf. And you cannot exchange that. No. For our solutions, that's your choice. What you install on that level and what you install on that level. This is what you need. You need 40 gig, 100 gig here. You had dense switch, less dense switch. You can exchange the places you're installing the switches. That's completely open architecture from the logical perspective, right? You just have to be connected this way. So that's your choice which switches you are choosing. And on top, you are putting the third-party operating systems like a BigSwitch network operating system. And you have the ready-to-go solution. And as I mentioned, some vendors are selling something we're calling hardware-defined data center, not software-defined data center, right? It's not really agile. It's not really innovative. It's not open, right? It locks customer into that big black box because it has the merchant silicon, maybe the Brockton, okay, but its own operating system, its own management, its own hardware devices which cannot be changed. Just that one, and this is finished. For our solution, well, you can change the operating system on the switches and leave the hardware. You can exchange the hardware for a newer one and leave the software as it was before. So you have full freedom, right? And it doesn't require the things called forklift upgrades. You can change the operating system. You can change the switches from 10 gig to 25 gig. And you live with the operating system on top, and you still have the same solution. And don't need to put completely new solution with a huge amount of money. So this is the Dell approach to the networking solution. Okay, so why open networking? The last slide for here. The choice for a customer. The choice for a right solution, right operating system, right features, right? Leaf spine architecture instead of three-tier traditional architecture. Repurpose hardware and software. So hardware can be replaced. Software also can be replaced. It's completely decoupled, right? Standard hardware. And of course, it's all about money. We can easily prove it's much cheaper in terms of CapEx and OpEx if you compare that to the traditional networking solution. And it means that that's investment protection. Do you have any questions? Okay, thank you for now. That was the first part. I'm here full day, so if you want to discuss something, please feel free to.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if you think about a customer X who has this black box architecture,
Mm-hmm.
networking, and they are hearing about what you said, what would be the next steps, or what would be the way to start making things happen?
Very good question. Thank you. So, well, also, of course, these days, customer have to try, right? Before he can buy something, he have to try if it really works. So, if I understand your question well, if customer thinks, I have a traditional architecture, right, since years, and I have a new data center to build, or a piece of data center to build, or maybe I would like to upgrade 1 gig to 10 gig or 25 gig. Well, I can, it sounds great, so maybe I have to try. So probably the first thing would be to ask me and Tomek on both to go to the customer side maybe and say something about that, like this one or more. Then probably we could do a proof of concept, right? So we can, for example, if customer is really interested, we could take the couple of switches, like 2, 4 switches to the customer side. Or first we can do that online via internet and show him something. But we can take 4 switches to the customer side and, for example, install these switches in a test track and put the software and show him how easy and how quick is that. And I will give you 2 examples from our Dell experience. Last year on a bank, we were doing the proof of concept. The bank have to build a new network, 10 gigabit, 40 gigabit network. And he asked Dell EMC plus BigSwitch. He asked Arista, for sure Cisco and Huawei, not sure about Arista, probably also, to show him the solution. Each vendor went to the customer place, installed the 6 switches in 3 racks and connect them together and show the customer what he can do, how to play, how it looks like. And after one of a very well-known vendor, I can't tell you which one, the first letter is C, who was doing that like 6 to 8 hours to prepare the test environment, which is not easy. Some solutions we all know are really not easy. The next day, the Dell plus the BigSwitch comes to the play, and Tomasz prepared a config in such a way that customer didn't have a time to drink a coffee, and said, it's so quickly, it's impossible. Okay, Mr. Customer, you can try. It was true. It was so quick to install the test environment, to prepare that just for a customer infrastructure, the customer was really under impression. I will also give you another example. 2 weeks ago, one of the engineering manager in Poland, which is the manager in the integrator, he went to the BigSwitch training in Paris, I believe. And that guy, I know him. He installed 2 years ago the network for a bank in Poland. I can't tell you the vendor name, the first letter is A. And he told us the following thing. He said, this is incredible. What I need like 1 week to do these things on my solution and install at the customer side with this A vendor. For a BigSwitch plus Dell, I need like 1 day to do the same. Not a week, just a day. It's very nice. And these are real life examples. So if customer is really interested, I think the best way to convince him for a new way of thinking and new solutions is to make a proof of concept, how it works, right? And do a small test. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.